Hi,
Hi,
and
Jessica.
welcome. Hi, Tarisha
Welcome,
Reno.
welcome to episode 2 of Freaking Paranormal.
Episode 2 of season 3. Isn't that crazy? Oh my God.
Yeah, it's very crazy.
I was looking back at our
And
notes and we're not doing very many. Like, last year there was only so many.
oh yeah, that's okay.
That's
What I
fine.
thought was weird, you know that thing I sent you today that one of my friends sent me about the most haunted states in the United States?
Mm-hmm.
I never guessed where one of the most haunted states was. It's so you would just never guess. It's that
Well,
old weird Wyoming.
that's not the most haunted.
It was one of them though.
Oh, it was one of them. Yeah, but it makes
Yeah,
sense because
yeah,
it's the Wild Wild West,
I guess.
Western potatoes.
So So we chose a couple other states that were equally as haunted and equally as unlikely.
Where were those? I forgot.
Uh, North and South Dakota.
D- yes. Which one did you do?
I hope I did North.
Yes, you did North.
And I'd
So
like to
yeah, I
start
did
off with,
South.
I would like to start off with a story that isn't really paranormal, but it's dang weird.
Dang, huh? That's a strong word for
Yeah,
you.
I know.
Why don't you kick it off then,
Okay.
impatient
I,
Patricia?
this is a story of a person that was frozen alive. And
Oh,
it was, yeah,
that's
it was
scary.
a teenage girl. She'd driven her dad's car into town to see friends. She was
Mm-hmm.
driving back home around midnight, and hey, it's a cat. It was in North Dakota in the winter, like in December,
Okay.
negative 22 degrees
Oh,
outside.
that sounds terrible.
And of course, hey, Aaron, oh no, he knocked over my coffee.
What a jerk. Do you
It's
need
a
to start over?
No, it's okay. Now he's behind the ring light. Is hey, because there's a little moth or something.
Technical
So she's in her dad's car.
difficulties.
She slips on the road, drives in the ditch, and can't get out. But she thought, it's okay. I think my friend's house is pretty close, and I
Oh,
could
so
walk
she's
there.
like, I'm gonna walk. Yeah.
And she has cowboy boots on. She doesn't even have winter boots. So she starts off, and it just kept getting longer and longer. And she ended up walking 2 miles in this frigid weather. She made it to the guy's yard, but she
Mm-hmm.
must have tripped and fallen down to her hands and knees, and she just couldn't get back up, and she just fell in the snow and froze. And
Like so close to the house.
yeah,
That's
the guy
terrible.
found her 6 hours later when he went out to his front porch, and he said he dragged her into the house. Her eyes were frozen open, but she was as hard as a rock. They couldn't even unbend her to get her into his
Yeah.
pickup. So they had to put her in the sedan of a friend that had been staying overnight with them.
Uh-huh.
They drove her to the hospital. They couldn't even get an IV in her vein.
That's
She was that
insane.
hard. Yeah. But three
Did she
hours
live?
later, this one nurse said, no, let's not, everybody was saying, oh, she's dead. She's dead. And this one
Yeah.
nurse said, no, just let me try putting heating pads around her body, which she
Yeah.
did.
And then like a
the
warm
woman,
IV, I would
well,
imagine.
eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
And she, after 3 hours, she revived and she was talking by noon. And
That's
to this
just,
day, that was in the 80s. To this day,
yeah.
she works at Walmart, has a couple kids, is married, and has no health effects.
Like no lingering effects. I guess
Yeah,
I guess as long as the flesh doesn't get what do you call it? Frostbite, maybe we could survive being like deep frozen. Like you know how
yeah,
certain animals go into hibernation because their
yeah,
heart rate just slows low enough.
yeah. She
Maybe
didn't
it's
even lose any
possible for
toes.
us. That's
Yeah.
wild.
She said her only disappointment was that she has no memory of those 6 hours, none at all. She said, I didn't see a bright light. I didn't see Jesus coming for me. I didn't hear anything. She
Well,
goes, I was a
yeah,
little bit
everything
disappointed.
was gone. I mean, it wasn't like there was any brain.
Yeah,
Her electrical system had shut down. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So obviously,
yeah. It
there's
was
nothing
frozen.
nothing
Yeah,
able to process it.
yeah. So that was
Interesting.
my story.
That's your first one?
Yeah, frozen alive. Crazy.
Better than being
Yeah.
buried alive, I would think.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
That's
Don't want to
just
think about
horrible.
that. Yeah.
Horrible and scary. So, are you going to share another one, or was that it?
Um. Okay, I'll
Was
share one more. This is a place. It's not that weird. It just has two different stories, and I'll let you choose which one you believe. So
fair?
this is called White Lady Lane, and it's this, you
Is it
know,
where all the Karens live?
white lady. Yeah, it's this remote, road on the outskirts of Walhalla, North Dakota. And the
Walhalla or
first story,
Valhalla?
well, they spell it with a W, but
Oh,
I,
okay.
I think that's how you pronounce Valhalla. It's Walhalla.
Valhalla. I don't know.
Yeah, because Wagner was German, and they pronounced the W as like a V,
Yeah,
and
but
I think
isn't
a V like a
Valhalla like
W.
Swedish? Isn't that Viking lore? Valhalla?
Yeah, but it was written by a German composer. I don't know. It's written in German. I
But
don't
don't you
know.
think Valhalla existed before Wagner?
But maybe it. I don't know if it started with a W in Sweden or not. I don't know anything
Research.
about Swedish myths and legends. So this lane winds through, some fields and trees, and it's near a bridge. And story number one is that there was this peddler that fell in love with this young lady, and her mother refused to let the peddler marry her. And so he got so distraught that he got a gun to shoot
Mm-hmm.
somebody.
Okay.
So who does he shoot?
Um, so there's the peddler. We could call him the door-to-door
Yes,
salesman. And he's going to
yes.
shoot either the mother or the woman he wants to marry, right?
Well, which one seems logical to you?
Well, I think just because of all the true crime stuff that I read, he probably shoots the daughter, the woman
Yeah,
he
he
loves.
does. Which,
Yeah.
yes, which doesn't make any sense. And then
Hmm.
he tried,
Because if I can't
right?
have her, no one else will.
Oh, I guess. And soon after, he tried to shoot himself and failed twice. So I don't know
Mm.
what eventually happened to that guy, but the lady in white, or the white lady, haunts Eddie's Bridge in this long flowing nightgown that she was wearing at the time of her
Mm.
death. So the second story seems a lot more plausible to me. In
Okay.
this story, a girl gets pregnant out of wedlock, and she
Okay.
has these religious parents, and they force her to marry the father of her child, and against her will. She's very upset, and
Hmm.
soon after the wedding, she loses the baby. The baby dies, and she's so distraught she hangs herself from Eddie's Bridge.
Okay. So
That one's,
those are both the like origin stories of the White Lady on the Bridge.
yeah, White Lady Lane. So
White
take your
Lady
pick.
Lane. Well, I mean,
Take your
couldn't they
pick.
both be true?
Well, how could that be? There would have to be two different ghosts.
Well, who's to say they're not two different ghosts? They're both white and they're both ladies. Like, I mean,
Okay. White
I'm just
Ladies Lane
thinking,
doesn't have the same ring. Yeah.
what? Well, I mean, here's my argument. Unless it's one person seeing the same ghost on multiple occasions, how do we know that all of the ghosts that are being seen look the same?
Maybe if they were both similar in appearance, I guess you wouldn't know if they both had, ghostly blonde hair or whatnot.
And are they black? Are they like monochrome? Yeah, are they monochromatic or are they
Ghosts,
just like colorful?
ghosts are always monochromatic.
How do you know?
They're seen at night for some reason.
Maybe it's just the way they take shape, their spectral form.
Those are the two things from North Dakota that I had so far. So what did you come up with? Anything super spooky?
Well, I covered North Dakota as well. Just kidding.
Oh,
No, I
right.
covered the Southern Dakota. And in one of the places I went for my research on the internets was saying that actually South Dakota might possibly be the most haunted state in America.
Oh, come on. They
Everyone's
all
got a claim
say
to
that.
fame. But, so I don't know much about the Dakotas at all,
I
except
have
that
been
I
there.
don't ever want to go there. Um,
Why? It's pretty.
just
South
no
Dakota.
desire, no
Mount
desire,
Rushmore. It's really pretty.
no desire whatsoever.
Okay.
So it is home to you would call it the Gold Rush town of Deadwood, which is also the
Oh,
namesake to an HBO program centered in Deadwood at the Gold Rush times. And at its peak in 1876, there was a reported population of 25,000 people.
that's pretty
And
big.
that's pretty big.
Especially, yeah.
And prior to that, I think it said like its population was around, I don't know, 2,500, something like that. But there was just like a major boom. Because initially, and it was stolen land, like it belonged to the Lakota, and that was
Oh,
gifted to them in the Laramie Treaty or something like that. Treaty of Laramie. I actually read the history because I'm like, I don't know anything about this. So the land was
yeah.
stolen. It was the Black Hills, and there were
Black
some
Hills
battles back
Gold.
and forth. It was supposedly well, obviously
Supposedly?
I said
Did you just say
supposedly.
supposedly?
No, Patricia, you're deaf. Remember? Um,
Okay.
I would not make that sort of a grammatical error. I've got way too many planets in Virgo to do that. Um, no, it was sacred land to the Lakota, and now I'm double guess. I'm doubting myself if it's Lakota. I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lakota, Dakota. Okay. Um, Anyway, they stole the land, they found gold in the hills, and that brought about a bunch of people and nefarious individuals because
Of
they were
course.
outlaws, and one begets the next, and there's lots of money, and then there's lots of sex and drugs and rock and roll, a la the Gold
Stagecoaches.
Rush era. Yeah. So Deadwood became this lawless town full of brothels and bars and yeah, those two things for the most part.
Ne'er-do-wells.
Ne'er-do-wells. The names that are recognized and are buried at one of the cemeteries there are Calamity Jane and Wild Bill Hickok.
Hmm.
So this is their city or their claim to fame for Deadwood. So with that being said, there are, a couple different places. Well, there's quite a few locations within Deadwood that, are haunted just because of all of the things that have gone on. And actually, the town burned like about 3 different times, burnt and
Of
rebuilt, because
course.
it's
Yeah.
just like little wooden structures and everything. So
So is
with
the
that,
town, sorry, is the town in the HBO series modeled after that, or was it filmed there, or is it similar?
I didn't
Do
get
you
that
know?
far. I'm going to guess that
Oh,
they probably did some filming there and then constructed sets because with so much of the original structures, in their third and fourth iteration, I'm sure that they, probably constructed sets, but it's modeled on it for sure. I've never watched the show myself, but
I never
the
have either.
the population now, I think I was reading it's at around like 1,500. So
I
you're
have a
getting a kitty
very
cat.
nasty boy. He's just
What?
making noise and,
He just
hey,
wants to
you
be
get down.
involved. He's a little
Yeah.
spirit. He's a little
He's
spirit
eating
cat.
cardboard. Yeah.
He's eating cardboard.
Sorry.
Okay. No worries. No worries. So back to Deadwood. Um, so now it's like it in the stuff I was doing. It seems like one of their main, economic resources is paranormal tourism. Like there were so many tours, nearly one of like all of, there's like quite a few hotels. And I think I was reading that there's a Silverado casino in the area. But for the most part, like the hotels, everything has a like, oh, you stay with us and you can, add on a paranormal tour and ask to stay in a haunted room. And, this restaurant has haunted tours and this is another haunted thing. It's not just all at Halloween. It's like, that's, their tourism.
That's their thing.
Yeah. So one of the places, I just picked a couple since you said, let's make this short, is the Bullock Hotel. And this is named after Seth Bullock, who came to start a hardware store. I don't know where he came from, but he started a hardware store. It burned down, and then he went on and that's when he built the hotel. And then he went on to become a sheriff, a U.S. Marshal, and a legislator. And he died apparently of, I think I
TB.
read it was like, no, it was like stomach cancer, or he had some kind of cancer. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But he is, the one that's most reported to be seen still hanging around the hotel, like checking on the staff. He's mostly known as like a playful little prankster. Like he will, be seen, well, not him, but he's responsible for moving objects like chairs and other things throughout the hotel. But
is he a butt pincher?
He is not. I didn't hear any reports of a butt pincher, but there's also a story of like a more modern day story, I guess, of a young boy, got out of the room somehow. His parents were looking all over the hotel for him. They go back to the room. There's the boy. And he's like, oh, yeah, I found this nice man. And he brought me back to my room. And then they later went down and like saw a photo of, Seth Bullock. And he's like, oh, that's the nice man that helped me. In general, he's just sort of still the caretaker of the building.
The good guy,
Yeah, the good guy. And then in another article I was reading, apparently in room 211, there are reports of hauntings, and that's where someone supposedly killed themselves, I think.
Oh.
So the other place within Deadwood that I felt would be appropriate to talk about is Wild Bill Bar and Trading Post. And the Wild Bill Bar and Trading Post. And this is a current day property that is not necessarily newer construction, but it is, a rebuilt structure on the approximate site of the saloon where Wild Bill Hickok was shot on August 2nd of 1876.
Now, wasn't he the one that his body was taken, he wanted it taken up to that mountain in Montana? Remember that story?
That was him. I'm going to click on him real quick here on Wikipedia.
I thought it was Great Falls, wasn't it? Great Falls.
Well, he's buried in Mount Moriah Cemetery in Deadwood.
He is, huh? Okay.
Yeah. He was playing
Maybe it was the
poker.
Oh.
There's Jesse James and the other guy. Oh, the hand of cards. Oh, he was shot while playing poker. And the hand of cards, which he supposedly held at the time of his death, has become known as the dead man's hand. 2 pairs, black aces, and 8s.
Oh, Dead Man's Hand. That sounds like a good novel title.
Doesn't it, though?
Yeah.
Anyway, back to my story. So this bar, that's its claim to fame. So it's up on, built approximately on the site of where he was shot, because the original saloon burned about 3 years after he was shot. Right. This place has actually been featured on Ghost Labs, which I think is a series, and they did, a paranormal investigation, and they, I guess, reportedly came across Wild Bill. They came in contact with him. So he haunts the site. And during its, heyday, the second floor of this property housed the brothel because, booze and babes, they go hand in hand. And they had terrible lives during that time because, murder and, there was that Spanish flu outbreak that happened and all sorts of good stuff. Smallpox that, they all
STDs
and unwanted children, STDs, abuse, all that good stuff. So I didn't write it down, but this property's changed hands quite a few times. And like, for whatever reason, whatever has gone in on the first floor, the second floor has remained abandoned. Like people just have employees are uneasy on this upper floor. And I think I was reading that prostitution got done away with in 1980 in South Dakota, or at least in Deadwood or whatever.
Wow.
So I don't know if it had been operating that way. They were talking about when the Silverado casino went in. So that's sort of when it started changing hands and, changing what it was, because they couldn't quite compete with, that big casino. I think they just turned into a bar or something.
So it was only like a 2-story building.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like.
Because it was just 2 stories. I think I did read at one point, currently it's been whoever the most recent owners are, they took the second story and turned it into a theater, and you can rent it out for events now. But employees are uneasy on the floor. They report hearing sounds of footsteps, strange feelings, smell of women's perfume. And there's been quite a few paranormal investigations, and one of them had EVP, I forget what that stands for, but they picked up recordings of voices saying a woman's name, like Gwendolyn, and one getting angry, and just various voices were picked up rather clearly on these recordings. And some also have they sense the presence of a small child, because I'm sure children were born or and aside from that, there's disembodied voices and all that fun creepy stuff.
Creepy
Deadwood, creepy good stuff.
Check that out.
Deadwood. But that's that when you start looking up haunted South Dakota or paranormal South Dakota, Deadwood is what pops up. It's I think their claim to fame. Aside from
those
one other
those EVPs, I think it's electronic voice processors, whatever it is. It's
maybe.
my EMF thing, And I was watching this video about my next story of a guy that was sitting there in his car with his meter. And I don't know how they decipher what is said on those things. It's always and, I can never make it out.
Maybe you need a translator.
I guess.
You need Google Translate.
Google Translator.
So Google Translate. So are we going to pause and then return? Pause for a break?
Yeah.
Pause for the cause?
Yeah, let's pause for a break. We'll be right back after this message from our sponsor. Welcome back.
Welcome back and
to freaking paranormal. We're talking about North and South Dakota this evening, in case you haven't listened to the first part, which would be totally unusual.
It's a titillating conversation.
It sure is.
Who knew the Dakotas were that interesting? I certainly did not.
Which brings me to the next site. It's a cemetery. It's called the Riverside Cemetery, and it's next to the Red River.
Near a river?
It is.
Oh, Fargo. Fargo's haunted.
Yeah. So this cemetery is within Fargo. It was established in 1879, although one lady was buried there before 1879. And it's considered one of the most haunted places in North Dakota. And it's been the subject of many shows. But the cool thing about Fargo? It is, I don't know anything about Fargo. I just know about this cemetery.
Okay, keep talking.
Which in Roman means a place of rest, by the way.
What does? Fargo?
In Latin, cemetery.
Fargo? Oh, cemetery.
Cemetery is derived from the Latin word for place of rest.
What's the Latin word?
I don't know.
You can't pronounce it?
Cemetery.
Cemetoire.
So the weird thing about the cemetery is there's a mausoleum where if you take a recording device, tape recorder or something, and you put it on this crypt, it will record knocking sounds from within the crypt.
That is disturbing.
Very disturbing. And scratching. Some people said they can hear scratching sounds as well. Creeps me out. That's what I was watching today. The guy with the meter sitting outside the crypt asking people to talk to him. And he got a lot of traction, but I couldn't understand a thing those spirits were saying.
Yeah. You weren't speaking the right language.
Yeah. Other people said they've heard crying, calling out, and unexplained mists, orbs, and weird video anomalies when they take videos. Unexplained. And this on the Haunted Places blog, one of the readers noted in the comments, she goes, I have 2 really laid back dogs that I take everywhere with me in my car. And we were going past the mausoleum, and my dogs, all of a sudden, it just jumped up, started crying and whining, and they were looking at something that I couldn't see in that cemetery.
So who's buried there? Who's buried in this mausoleum?
There's tons of people. There's a lot of people. Yeah.
Anyone of note, or?
Not that I know of.
Huh.
But it's supposed to be, it's really pretty, but populated with lots of spirits, especially in that one mausoleum.
And seemingly
and it's near the highway.
Spirits, like spirits that aren't at rest,
Yeah.
Unsettled spirits.
So they shouldn't be in a cemetery then, should they?
So the other place that I picked to talk about is the place called Easton Castle in Aberdeen,
Easton?
South Dakota. Easton, like Easton, Easton.
Oh.
So it's a old Victorian mansion, and it dates back to 1888. That's, I guess, its origin, and it was owned by the Easton family, and that is coincidentally the year that L. Frank Baum moved to town, and it is the supposed inspiration for the Wizard of Oz, because the exterior is yellow brick. And it's this big imposing mansion. And actually his niece, I didn't write down her name, she actually worked as a housekeeper for this household. And they would throw these lavish parties and, just like generally we're big society people. But it was abandoned in the mid 20th century. And after that, I think the Eastons, they didn't really mention their name. They had a son who took it over, and then eventually he became sort of a recluse, and the life of the house died essentially. And
there were too many flying monkeys around.
Something. And so once, he died, then the house, became abandoned, went into disrepair, and just people, had reports of, hauntings of partygoers from years past, and the family. And I think eventually it was reopened as you can actually camp on the grounds now, which is interesting, but I didn't get anything major. It just was kind of spooky house. Oh, it was built by a hotelier, C.A. Bliss.
Oh, that's a nice name.
Isn't it? C.A.
Bliss
Bliss.
Hotels, yeah.
Carol Francis Easton was a banker, also from New York, and he obtained the house in 1893. Yeah.
Okay. Was that it on the Easton Castle?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I didn't get very deep.
I have a really weird cryptoid creature for my next entry into today's episode. And it's called the Miniwashitu.
What's that?
It's also known as the Missouri River Monster.
Okay.
And apparently it was a mythical creature that the Dakotas talked about.
Okay.
And it lived deep in the Missouri River. And it looks like kind of a minotaur, like a bull body with a, tail with a triangle on the end and hooves, spikes on its back, and it was upright, one eye and one horn. And it would sometimes go up the river in a mad rage. It would turn the water red like a ball of fire, and it would just go up the river.
Oh, weird.
So what do you suppose these people were seeing?
I don't know. That's odd to have a bull, like, that it's not a fish body,
Yeah.
I did read, like, there's a place in South Dakota that also talked of, like, a river turning red, and it was attributed to, like, the iron deposits in the area.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which makes sense. But
Yeah.
as far as the creature, that's a weird one. A buffalo, maybe? I don't know.
I was thinking maybe it was, what's that fish called? The sturgeon.
Oh, yeah. That's what they blame Loch Ness Monster on and all that stuff.
Yeah, because they can get huge, and they also can be seen from the bank because they come up out, into the shallows sometimes. But, yeah, and the legend was, if you saw this creature, you would go insane. You'd go home. If you made it,
just go crazy.
You would get you'd start having spasms of pain so bad you couldn't find any rest until you were put out of your misery. I don't know what that means, or you just died. So I wouldn't want to see one of those.
That sounds awful. Sounds like maybe it was a sexually transmitted disease or something.
Yeah, I don't know. It was called the Miniwashitu.
Miniwashitu.
Crazy. Yeah, Miniwashitu.
Miniwatusi.
It's probably Miniwashitu. Yeah.
Miniwashitu.
Water. Yeah. So like that
Minnesota,
wraps up, yeah. That wraps up me South and North Dakota, I guess.
That wraps up me North Dakota?
So if you have a story you'd like to share, we'd really like to hear it and maybe even put you on our show.
Yeah, we'll butcher it for you.
Yeah. You have to open yourself up for ridicule and bad technology.
Oh, it's, the best combination.
Yeah. Well, Jess, it was nice talking to you.
With that being said,
ta-ta
good to see you. Toodaloo.
And stay freaky. Bye.
Or something.